All right, Giant fans. Got my little new series kind of going on here. It's not quite ESPN 30 for 30, but it's my New York Giants 98 for 98, 98 seasons in 98 days. And we start off where it all began, 1925, season number 1. It all starts with Tim Mara, okay? He's the guy that spent $500, okay? And he purchased the New York Giants, okay? In 1925, the NFL was in need of a franchise in a large city that could be used to showcase the league, because back in 1925, baseball, college football, boxing were huge. NFL, not so huge, okay? So they needed a big city, New York, okay? Because let's, not forget, for the most part, the NFL was pretty much like in the Northeast, okay? So, we're not talking, anything in Texas or Los Angeles for the most part. It was all up in the Northeast. And what bigger city in the Northeast than to have a team in New York City, right? So NFL President Joe Carr traveled to New York to offer boxing promoter Billy Gibson the franchise. Gibson had owned the New York Brickley Giants, the NFL's last attempt to put a team in New York. While Gibson turned the offer down, he referred Carr to his friend Tim Mara. Ding, 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 ding. Okay. While Mara did not know much about football, Mara's friend, Dr. Harry March, did. March was a former physician for the Canton Bulldogs of the pre-NFL Ohio League. There was multiple leagues, independent leagues and all and everything, okay, but he was a physician for a former football team, okay, and he was also the future author of the first professional football history book called Pro Football, Its Ups and Downs. And Harry March soon became the club's first secretary. Interesting. So the backing led by Mara to purchase the NFL franchise for the New York at a cost of $500, or basically about $7.5 million in as of 2020. Okay, but $500. Mara and March even signed Jim Thorpe, the greatest athlete. Some people say the greatest athlete of all time. Okay, they even signed Jim Thorpe to play several half games in order to boost attendance. Attendance was huge. Attendance was everything back then, right? It's not like that way it is today with TV money coming in, buying a hot dog for $800,000. If you want to park your car at the stadium, that's $1 trillion. Everything, it's the price is ridiculous nowadays. If you did that stuff back then, guess what? Nobody's coming to your game, right? And actually, in a lot of instances, they had to give tickets away just to get people to come in to the stadium. So attendance was huge back then. It was basically the only way to, for the most part, they got revenue, right? So they signed Jim Thorpe, okay, to play several half games. He only played, I believe, in like 2 games for the Giants, 2 or 3 games, and that was pretty much it for him for the season. Let's see. It says, however, many of the New York sports fans still looked to college football, which was huge back then, and stayed away from the pro sport. During the Giants' first season, attendance was so poor that Mara lost over $40,000. Now, there's a point here I'm going to read where we actually owe, quite possibly owe the existence of the New York Giants, quite possibly owe the existence to the Chicago Bears. Okay, not so much the Chicago Bears, but Red Grange. So Mara lost over $40,000. Okay, because basically, when you purchase the franchise, okay, that's all you got. But you got to come up with, people to work. You had to pay the people to work. You had to pay the ball players. You had to pay for the uniforms. You had to pay for travel back and forth. You had to pay for all of that stuff. So he was dishing it all out. Well, the attendance was so poor. I mean, maybe, I don't know, 25, 50 cents for a ticket. They weren't making much money, right? So, I mean, every game, every week it went along. They played 12 games that year. Okay, they had a preseason game, if you want to call it that. I'll go over that in a minute. But if you figure, in the 12 games, they just kept losing money, more and more and more money. So it got to be pretty expensive. So he lost over $40,000 at one point. Okay. So we got here. To tap into New York's college football fans, Mara tried to sign ex-college football superstar Red Grange, only to find he was a big draw. Big draw. He was like, back then, he was almost like Babe Ruth, pretty much, okay? Only to find that Red Grange was a member of the Chicago Bears. However, still looking for a way to cash in on Grange's popularity, because when you got somebody like that, people would come and see him, okay? So Mara scheduled a game against the Bears to be played at the Polo Grounds, okay? Now, the Giants played the Polo Grounds from 1925, the first year of existence, to 1955. Why the Polo Grounds? Why not Yankee Stadium? Well, because the New York Baseball Giants played in the Polo Grounds, okay? So the New York Baseball Giants and the New York Football Giants all played at the Polo Grounds. The New York Football Giants played at the Polo Grounds from 1925 to 1955. 1956, when they wound up winning their fourth championship, okay, 1956, they moved to Yankee Stadium. They beat the Chicago Bears 47-7 in the championship game in Yankee Stadium. All right, so Mara scheduled a game against the Bears to be played at the Polo Grounds. The gate receipts totaled $143,000 for that one game alone against Grange and the Bears, and Mara recovered all of his losses for the 1925 season. Now, just suppose, I'm going to go over some of these teams. We're going to start looking at some of these teams, okay? Just suppose, okay, that there was no Chicago Bears or Grange in that, to get a game against. They might have had. I mean, if he lost $40,000, if he went up, oh my God, let me pick if he went up against the if he went up against the Milwaukee Badgers. There was 20 teams in the NFL in 1925. They went up against the Milwaukee Badgers, okay? They're not drawing anybody. He might have lost even more money. The New York Giants might have had to fold after one season because the amount of money they lost. Now, that's the problem with a lot of these teams. A lot of these teams didn't draw fans, didn't make money, obviously didn't draw fans. Fans weren't in the stands. There's no money, right? You have no money, you can't pay your players. You can't stay in existence. And it was a problem with a lot of these teams back then. And I said there was 20 teams back in 1925. Every year, let me see. Can I do this here? I guess I can't now. But I mean, I'm just going to say every year, the amount of teams that were in the league changed every year. Okay. So I'm going to go over these teams here. Got the Chicago Cardinals, okay, the Pottsville Maroons, the Detroit Panthers, New York Giants, the Akron Pros, Frankfurt Yellow Jackets, the Chicago Bears, the Rock Island Independents, the Green Bay Packers, the Providence Steamroller, Canton Bulldogs, Cleveland Bulldogs. Okay, Cleveland Bulldogs, more on them in a couple minutes here. All right. Kansas City Cowboys. How about that, huh? The Hammond Pros, Buffalo Bisons, the Rochester Jeffersons, the Dayton Triangles, the Duluth Kellys, Milwaukee Badgers, and the Columbus Tigers. Now, all these teams they were scheduled. There was no like league schedule that came out and everybody played the same amount of games. Everybody had 8 home games and 8 road games. There was none of that. All right. The Frankfurt Yellow Jackets played 20 games that year. They were 13-7. Okay. Where we at? The Duluth Kellys played 3 games. Right. So there was everything was, all different. I mean, the Giants wound up playing 12 games. The Akron Pros played 8 games. Chicago Cardinals played 14 games. Columbus Tigers played 9 games. The Milwaukee Badgers played 6 games. The Dayton Triangles played 7 games. I mean, they were all different. Okay, there was no set schedule or nothing. All right. Now the Giants, they started that season. Okay, the first game was like a warm-up game preseason. It was the New Britain from a team from, it was like an independent team, I guess, like from all New Britain. Okay, from Connecticut. Okay, that's where they wound up. There was the team that they played against. It was a like a warm-up game, preseason game. Okay. That they wound up winning. They won that one 26-0. So the first game pretty much the giants ever played, although it wasn't a league game, okay, was the New Britain, Connecticut. It was Willowbrook Park. There was a 3,000, okay, people in attendance there. All right. Now the all New Britain team, I said that. I mean, they played, they played some. A lot of it was like, it was like an independent league. They played different, all different teams. Okay, but so the New York Giants kind of official, unofficial first game was against the all New Britain team from New Britain, Connecticut. Okay, the Giants wound up winning that 26-0 at Willowbrook Park on October 4th. That's when they started their season, October 4th, 1925. Okay. The Giants' first official game, okay, was played on October 11th, all right, against the Providence Steamroller. Okay. They lost 14-0. Okay. So their first official game ever was I believe their first 3 games were all on the road. Or I'm sorry, the Giants, let's see, they're all on the road. No, okay, their first 2 were on the road. Okay, they played the Providence Steamroller. They lost 14-0. Actually, it wasn't until the Giants' 4th game that they actually scored a touchdown. It was against the Cleveland Bulldogs, which I referred to a couple of minutes ago. Okay, their first game, they lost 14-0 to the Providence Steamroller. That was on the road. Okay, then they lost to the Frankfurt Yellow Jackets. Okay, 5-3. Okay. And actually, if I'm not mistaken, I think, let's see if I can get the box score here. I think Jim Thorpe tried to punt the ball. His punt was blocked. Okay, he tried to punt the ball in the first quarter. Okay, the Frankfurt Yellow Jackets blocked the punt, okay, of Jim Thorpe, if I'm not mistaken. And that gave him the 2 points. And that was the 2 points that the Giants wound up losing by. Okay, so they lost 5-3 in their second game in existence. Okay, they played the Frankfurt Yellow Jackets. All right, 5-3 in Frankfurt Stadium in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Okay, then they lost 5-3. Their third game, they wound up playing. Actually, and it's funny because on October 17th, they played the Frankfurt Yellow Jackets. Okay, the very next day, they played the Frankfurt Yellow Jackets. Okay, this time they played them in the Polo Grounds. So they played the Frankfurt Yellow Jackets back to back. Did the same the very next day. They played a game on October 17th, and they played them again on October 18th. This time they lost to the Frankfurt Yellow Jackets 14-0. This was at the Polo Grounds. Okay. It wasn't until November 1st, okay, against the Cleveland Bulldogs at the Polo Grounds. The Giants actually, they scored their first, actually they scored 3 touchdowns, if I'm not mistaken. Let me pull this up, the box score here. 19-0. I think it was 3 touchdowns. I think they missed 2 extra points. Yeah, the kick failed, yeah. Hinkie Haynes, okay, had a 5-yard rush. Hinkie Haynes, that's the name to remember. 5-yard rush from Hinkie Haynes was the Giants' first ever touchdown against the Cleveland Bulldogs at the Polo Grounds, November 1st, 1925. So there you go, okay. The extra point was missed. Hinkie Haynes completed a 25-yard pass to Jack McBride. That put him up 13-0. And then in the fourth quarter, Joe Williams had a 2-yard rush. Once again, the extra point was missed, and the Giants wound up winning 19-0. Okay, so that was the Giants' first ever victory. Okay, was against the Cleveland Bulldogs at the Polo Grounds, November 1st, 1925. The New York Giants' first ever victory. They wound up winning 19-0. Okay. Then the thing was, the shame was that the Giants, okay, started off 0-3. Okay, but then they wind up finishing. They finished on a good, on a good run there. I mean, they finished. They wind up winning 8 of their final 9 games. If they didn't start off 0-3, they would have had a chance at possibly winning the title. Now the title was given to the team back then from when the Giants entered the league. Well, that league started in 1920. Okay, so when the Giants were formed in 1925, it was the NFL's 6th season. They started in 1920. Okay, so the 1925 was the NFL's 6th season. It was the Giants' first season. Okay, so but basically from 1920 until 1932, okay, those 13 seasons, the team who had the best winning percentage, okay, wound up getting the championship. Okay, there was no playoff or anything like that. Okay. They wasn't until 1933 when they wound up splitting into 2 divisions. Each team that had wound up winning each division played each other for the playoff for the championship game. So that was 1933. But from 1920 to 1932, there was no playoffs, no champion. The team who had the best winning percentage wound up winning got the title. Okay, and in 1925, okay, the Chicago Cardinals. Okay. Their record was 11-2-1. Okay, and they wound up, their winning percentage was .846. Okay, they wound up winning. They wound up winning the title, 11-2-1. But the Giants didn't start off 0-3. They would have had a shot. Okay. Let's see. Then, I mean, the Giants, they played the Buffalo Bisons. See, they played the Cleveland Bulldogs November 1st. 2 days later, they played the Buffalo Bisons, okay, at the Polo Grounds. They won 7-0. Okay. 5 days later, they played a game. The Buffalo Bison game was on a Tuesday. Okay. Right. When they played the Frankfurt Yellow Jackets back-to-back games, they played them on Saturday, then they played them Sunday, very next day. Right. But they played the Cleveland Bulldogs on Sunday. 2 days later, they played the Buffalo Bisons. 2 days later, right? They beat the Bisons 7-0. Then the following Sunday, they played the Columbus Tigers. They beat them 19-0. Then, let's see, then 3 days later on Wednesday, they played the Rochester Jeffersons, okay, on November 11th on a Wednesday. Okay. They beat them 13-0. Okay. Then 4 days later on Sunday, they played the Providence Steamroller once again at the Polo Grounds. This time the Giants would prevail. They won 13-12. Okay. Then on, let's see, November 22nd, they played the Kansas City Cowboys. So the first time the Giants ever played the Cowboys, they won. They won 9-3 at the Polo Grounds. Okay. Let's see. Then there was a game against the Buffalo Bisons, okay, on November 26th, which was canceled. Okay. Doesn't say why, but on November 26th, they were supposed to play the Buffalo Bison, and the game was canceled. Okay. Then, let's see here. They wound up playing, I think the Rock Island Stapletons, they beat them 7-0. All right. Then they played the Dayton Triangles. Okay. And on November 29th, they won that one game 23-0. So, I mean, the Giants were on a roll here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. In a span of 8 games, the Giants gave up 15 points on defense. I mean, they had a good defense back then. Then came the game, okay, the big game, okay, the game that had 68,000 people. Actually, from what I remember, there was over 70,000 people there because it was standing room only. Some people jumped the gates just to get in to see, the Bears play the Giants and all. But apparently, right here, they have attendance was 68,000, okay, but the receipts from the game was over $143,000. And that one game alone, this game here, December 6th, 1925, when the Chicago Bears came to play the New York Giants in the Polo Grounds, that one game could have saved the Giants, the existence of the Giants. Okay. The Bears won that day 19-7. Okay. But it was much more than that. It was just much more than a game. All right. Then the following Sunday, the Giants once again played the Bears, this time in Cubs Park in Chicago, Illinois. And this time the Giants beat the Bears 9-0. Okay. The Giants then also played some more, I guess to try to make some extra money, I guess. They played the Coral Gables Collegians 2 times. On Friday, okay, well, they played three looks like all-star or collegiate games, all in Florida, okay, on New Year's Day, 1926, January 1st, 1926, okay, they played the Coral Gables Collegians, the New York Giants did. They lost 13-3. The game was played in West Palm Beach, Florida, okay. Let's see, that 5 days later on a Wednesday, they played the Coral Gables Collegians once again. They lost once again 14-13. This one was played Coral Gables, Florida. Not sure where that's at. Then 3 days later on January 9th, 1926, the Giants played the Jacksonville All-Stars in Jacksonville, Florida. Okay, the Giants won that game 7-0, but these last 3 games didn't count toward the schedule at all. Okay. Didn't count toward the schedule. All right. So, I mean, but the Giants wound up overall, had a very, very successful first season, being 8-4. Okay. Very, very successful. I mean, first year in existence, 8-4. There was a huge controversy for the NFL. All this stuff is very, very fascinating. All right. The NFL 2025 championship controversy. Okay. The controversy surrounds who actually won the 25 championship. Officially, the Chicago Cardinals are listed as the 1925 NFL champions because they finished with the best winning percentage. However, many Pottsville Maroons, okay, wound up in second place. Pottsville fans at the time claimed that the Maroons were the legitimate champions. The Maroons and the Cardinals were the top contenders for the title, with Pottsville winning the late season meeting between the two, 21-7. But the Maroons scheduled the game against the team of University from Notre Dame All-Stars in Philadelphia on the same day that Frankfurt Yellow Jackets were scheduled to play a game in the same city. Frankfurt protested, saying that it was violating their protected territory rights. Yeah, because, I mean, back then, if you had two games being played at the same time, you're splitting up the attendance, and you can't have that. right? So although NFL President Joe Carr warned the Maroons in writing that that they face suspension if they played a game in Philadelphia, the Maroons claimed for some reason that Carr had previously approved the game during a telephone call and played anyway. In response, Carr fined the club. They fined the Pottsville Maroons and suspended it from all league rights and privileges, including the right to play for the NFL championship, and returned its franchise back to the league. Okay, so let's see. So what wound up happening, okay, is that the Chicago Cardinals wound up getting the they won the title. Their record was 11-2-1. The Pottsville Maroons were 10-2. Okay, but had the current post 1972 system of counting ties as half a win and half a loss been in place in 1925, which it wasn't, the ties didn't count back then. They didn't count at all toward the percentage. Okay, if the ties did count back then as half a win and half a loss, the Maroons would have won the NFL championship with a winning percentage of 833, while the Cardinals' winning percentage would have been 821. Okay, but because the ties didn't count, okay, the Chicago Cardinals won the 1925 NFL championship with a winning percentage of 846. They were 11-2-1. Winning percentage of 846. The Pottsville Maroons were 10-2-0. Their winning percentage was 833. But as I said, once again, if ties counted as half a win and half a loss, the Chicago Cardinals winning percentage would have been 821. The Pottsville Maroons would have been 833, and the Pottsville Maroons would have been the champions. But I see all that stuff is really fascinating like that. But anyway, it looks like the Giants were tied for fourth place with the Akron Pros. The Giants were 8-4-0. The Akron Pros were 4-2. So both their winning percentages were 667. Okay. So the Giants, the Detroit Panthers were in third place overall. They were 8-2. Their winning percentage was 800. Okay. So, if you, overall, the Giants' first season to finish 8-4-0 and tied it for fourth place out of 20 teams, pretty impressive. They scored 122 points. They only gave up 67 points. Right, 12 games. I mean, he gave up like 5.5 points a game. And then if you figure, I mean, he gave up 67 points, but 33 of those points came in the first 3 games. I mean, so I mean, they had a really, really good defense back then. Not much of an offense, but they had a really, really good. But I mean, that's the way it was back then. But I mean, overall, for the first season for the New York Football Giants, for them to go, 8-4-0. And wound up and tied for fourth place. Pretty impressive. Bob Folwell was the first coach in the history of the New York Football Giants. Okay, the Giants had, I don't know if I can count here. I gotta find. I got so many tabs open up here. Boom. This is a show here. I mean, they got. It's not like what the roster is nowadays. See, what do they got? Okay, here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Let's count. 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28. Apparently, it looked like they had like 29 guys played for them in the 29. Right, for the whole season, all 12 games. All right, Jim Thorpe, he only played in 3 games for the Giants, so he was pretty much at the end of his career. He was 38 years old, so he was a phenomenal athlete in the turn of the century and all of that. But by the time 1925 rolled around, he was 38 years old. So he only played 3 games for the Giants, but 29 guys played the entire season for the Giants. Right? But Bob Folwell is the first official coach in the history of the New York Football Giants. He only did 1 year. Okay. the following season, the Giants would have another coach in there as well. So basically, back then it was like a lot of the coaches only lasted like 1 or 2 seasons. So Bob Folwell did a very, very good job for the New York Giants for 1925. So to be 8-4, you can't complain. All right, guys. Well, that does it for this episode of, I'm not going to say 30 for 30. I'll say this episode of 98 for 98. I'll be back again tomorrow with season number 2, all right? 1926 NFL New York Football Giants season. So until then, guys, I'll see you later.